Hi, welcome to my tutorial for creating a custom gather.town map for teaching purposes. So hopefully by now you've already played around with gather.town, seen the things that you could do, and maybe you want to use it in order to create a virtual classroom. And so what I'm going to go through is an example of setting up a classroom specific for group work. All right. So if you go into Gather, one of the things you want to make sure to do is to log in. I've already logged in. So you can log in, make an account, because this is where you will be creating your spaces, but you will also be creating your custom maps. So I've already logged in, and you can go down to here where it says upload a map with our mapmaker tool. This is the primary tool that we are going to be using in order to make our custom map. So I'm going to click on it, and it brings up this menu. And here you go. Everything that you need to do is pretty much in here. You can do two things. You can modify in an existing map, an existing template, or you can make your own. I am going to choose to make my own. And I have created a set of backgrounds and objects in which I'm going to be putting into my map. And you can access those. I will put the link down at the bottom at github.com Dr. Jason Ibarra gather classroom resources, but I'll put that link in there. But you can actually download the various images that I will be using to create my map. So you can actually do the same thing if you wish to do so. You can go and individually download an image, or if you go here, you should be able to download the whole set. So you can do either two. So I am going to go back to my Gather map maker, and I'm going to click on here. And the first thing I will do is upload the background that I'll be using. So I go to upload background, and I think it was Gather Classroom. Here we go. Before I go too far, I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm going to label it and export the map. So I can, of course, export to one I've already created, but I'm going to call this one new test classroom. For example, you can, of course, call yours whatever you want to do, but now I have created it. And it says, export error, please set a spawn point. So this is a very minimum thing that one needs to do in order to go ahead and save these. So let me go ahead and just go into spawn mode, click on it, and I'm just going to place a spawn point here. Let me see if I can export the map at this point. Great. All right. So you will notice that there's a grid. And so each square in this grid has various properties. When you're in MapMaker, pretty much the main thing you do is you modify and you add, you modify, you create and modify properties in these various locations. So each square is a location that possibly the avatar can go to. Of course, one of the first thing you want to do is actually restrict whether or not your avatar can walk walk across or pass through that space. And so I'm going to go to impassable mode up here on the right, and I'm going to set up my grid. I'm going to create a perimeter around which you can't leave the space. You'll want to do that. So if you go ahead and you click, it'll make a red box. That means you can't pass through here. If you hold down the left button, you can actually drag across. And let's say you make a mistake like that. If you hold down Shift and the left click, then you can actually erase what you did. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and go around and restrict where I can be. Just create my space. I'm going to not allow anyone to walk through walls. Let's see. I may have to make this bit a little bigger. You may have to make your screen a little bigger when you do this. Alright, so now I have created boundaries around my space. And that's one of the first modifications that you will be doing. We did a spawn point, and that is we define where we will enter this virtual world. Well, where we are going to enter the room, and so the green space is one of them. And you can go ahead and actually add more spaces. So, if you go to spawn mode, you can select these. And so when someone enters your room, they will either be in any of the green squares. That's going to be random. You usually want to put them close enough to each other so people will be near each other when they first enter the space. You don't necessarily have to do that. I'm going to actually move my entering space in here where the students and I will, first enter the space when we go into the room. And the rest of this area we're actually going to set up for group work. There are some other modes. Portal mode we will not be using in this particular tutorial. This allows you to move into differently mapped spaces, different rooms that are connected. There is a YouTube tutorial by gather.town if you want to know how to do that, but I think for these purposes it's unnecessary, so let's not complicate things unnecessarily. So defining our world, there is assets. So if you go into asset mode and object mode, these are things you can add into the space. Assets typically are just images that you put in to create your map. Objects can be images, but they're really actions. So if I put an object, it could be like a link to a shared document. It could be a link, for example, to a Zoom call or some sort of pop-up image. This was designed for conferences, so you could do like a pop-up poster. So that's what you can do in the object mode. Spaces actually allows you to define regions where everyone is within that region can talk to each other, and it's restricted to people in that region who can talk to each other. So if you've played around with Gather, you know that when you're near someone, you'll be able to see their video and you'll be able to talk and interact with them depending on the distance that you are away. There is some reasons why you may want to play around with spaces mode, because what if you want to kind of extend that region or define it specifically? And we will actually be defining these for our groups that we're going to have the students go into. Let's go ahead and in our room put some tables and chairs I will do a four corners version, putting tables and chairs in different four corners and define the spaces, but you can do anything you wish to do. So I will go to asset mode and I will move my mouse over to where I want to put, for example, a desk and chairs. And so I'm going to left click, and it gives you this option, choose slash upload. If I go to choose, it gives me all the ones I've recently used and ones that are given to you by gather.town. I do not see the one I want to use. I want to use the table that I created. So I'm going to go to upload assets and I'm going to select the desk and chairs file that I got from GitHub. And it shows up right there. And so now I can go ahead and click on it and create, and it puts my desk and chairs right here. Where it's kind of grayed out, that's where the image is anchored. This is where I clicked on to create it, and this is where I will click to erase it. Similar to creating or like changing whether or not you can pass through, you can go ahead and shift click to remove any of these assets that you've put in. So I'm going to go ahead and add them. So I just left click, choose upload, desk and chairs, create, and then maybe I want to put another set of desk and chairs next to it. So we'll have a corner here, and I will do four corners. For my groups. You certainly don't have to be like this. You can do whatever you choose. Gather works well with smaller groups, but we'll do larger groups here. Just you can do this to indicate where you want things to be, and you can add other assets. For example, chairs that are facing the other way. We'll go ahead and just do one of them. Choose upload. It's not in here, I think, that I want to use. So I'll open up and use the left or the right facing chair. So here's my right facing chair. And I've added, and here it pops it in. Maybe this is not where I want to have the chairs. And I can go ahead, create, and there it is. Notice it's going to be in front of this. So I may be able to put it behind, or go ahead and just add the table and chairs on top of it. So I've added a chair here. Okay. So when we have students go into these various corners, we want them to be able to communicate with each other. And maybe we don't want a lot of crosstalk to happen. So we can explicitly define spaces where everyone within that space will be connected through the audio and video. So in order to do that, I go to Spaces mode over here on the right. Move that in so you can see what I'm doing. And then you want to identify your spaces. Typically I do it in numbers, so number 1, space 1. If you want to be less clunky, and I prefer when these things are less clunky. You should remove colored to no, otherwise it just puts an ugly circle where the spaces are. So one, and here we go. And so now, since I am in spaces mode, I can use the left click to make all this space. Here I am. A place where you can talk. Now, one thing I noticed that I did is I put tables, but let's say I don't want any of the avatars to pass through a table. We want maybe, so I'm going to just remove all this real quick. And I'm going to go ahead to impassable mode up here. I'm just going to make tables such that you can't walk through the tables. So now I go back to spaces and I'm going to make everything in this corner space 1. So that means anybody that has moved their avatar into the space can interact with anyone else in this space, even if someone is here and the other person is over there. So this is space 1. I now will go and change the space number. So space 2 is going to be defined as spaces where. So notice the number 2 that defines this space. Okay, before I go too far, I'm going to go and export. So this doesn't auto save, so remember to save things. I'm going to go export map, and the one that new test classroom should have been highlighted, but I will go ahead and highlight it. Go update. Wonderful. Okay, perhaps when you're doing this, you'd like to try it out as you're creating the map. So once you have a map that has spawn points and these different limitations, we can actually try it out. So I will open up another tab and go to gather.town. Here we are, and I'm going to create a new space. And I have to create a new space because once you've identified a map with a particular space, it can't be changed. So I'll just create a new space, and I'm call it whatever. I'm just going to call it new test classroom. You want to set a moderation password so that you have some capability to, for example, send a note to everyone, or you'll pin a note, kick people out. And then it says select a map, and of course these are all of the generic maps that you have, but you want to go to custom. And in custom, we'll have the ones that you've created. So here is new test classroom. This is the one that we created. So I have a name. I have a password for the moderation. By default, I'm not going to put a password to enter, but now that I have a moderator password, I can change that. And I can go into a new test classroom. So now let's create this space. And it thinks, submit your name. All right, so now I am in this classroom. space I've created, and I can walk around. And if I did things correctly, I can't walk through walls. Good. Okay. And now when it says you have entered a private space, remember I defined this bottom area as space 2, where everyone in it can talk to each other, and I cannot walk through the tables. Wonderful. I think I made you can walk through, but between them, but I can't walk through. So this allows you to play around with the spaces, and you can do all the modifications you wish to your map, and they will show up in here. There's a caveat, though. I've actually managed to break the system down, and that is, do not upload a new background. If you do, it will crash, and you will not be able to recover your classroom space, and you'll just have to create a new one. There is a way with portals going in between maps to do that without it crashing. I just advise to avoid doing that, but that's the only thing that has caused it so far to crash. Okay, so I've created these spaces, and now I want to create a space in here where students, if they go in here, they can also be able to talk to each other. For example, if I want to talk to all the students at once, if they're gathered in there. So I will go ahead, and I am still in spaces mode. I'm going to select 5. And I'm going to go in here and just select this whole region. It's like paint by numbers. Well, not really painting, but... Okay, and here we go. So if you are in here, you can talk to anyone else in here. Great. And if I go to export map, new test classroom, update, it will say map new test classroom, upload successful, and it will already automatically put it in here. So I should be able to walk in and out. It says, oh, you have entered a private space. So if I'm in here and with anyone else, I'll be able to talk to them. So that's nice. So that's another nice thing about creating a custom map, is when you modify the map, you modify the space that you're going into. One thing that Gather doesn't do as well is doesn't do like large lecture sizes. So maybe I want to create some sort of, for example, link to Zoom. I can do that. So I'm going to click over here. So now I'm back into the space. I'm going to go to asset mode, and I'm going to put a little door, something that looks like a door right here. So click, choose, or upload. This is one of the images that I already have. It'll be a right facing door, and I will create, and there is a door. Now I can link it to an object, in this case an object, to create a Zoom call. I can go to object mode. I can just go ahead and click over here. And there is something called external call integration, which opens up a link to an external service or website, and when you go to it, it will automatically turn off your camera and microphone within Gather, so you can have it be working in what external, for example, if you go to Zoom, so if I click on it, it gives a distance threshold of how far away you need to be to see that you can enter, and then you would put, for example, your Zoom link here at the bottom and create it. So I've created it. Let me go and export my map. So now I can go actually test it out. So here I am. So if I go near that door, it says press X to enter Zoom call. So this allows me to go in and out of Zoom calls if I wish to do so. Okay. So one more thing I want to show, and that is embedding objects. And I want to, for example, put a shareable Google Doc in each of the different group spaces. And this is pretty easy once you've done it once. So I'm going to go choose so here is, for example, sample lab table 1. So any the students within table 1, within spaces 1, they can just go ahead and pull this up. And I go to share, anyone with the link, and then I just copy the link. There I go. So then I can go back to my Gather classroom. I'm in object mode, go here, left click, new object, and instead of external call integration, I'm going to select shared document. So, and then here at the bottom, I'll put the URL, that link that I copied from the Google Doc. Activation distance, I'm going to change that to like 2 or 3 to make sure anyone in that area can access. I've put the tables far enough apart that there shouldn't be overlapping. So create. Let me go to export map, new test classroom, update. So let's see if it works. Here I am. I'm in my classroom and I go up to here. I've entered a private space and I can, it says press X for shared document. So I do that. And here we go. I can actually go in and modify the document. So there's one thing to do, to be careful. Students, when they have it up, they can still be talking to each other. But if they happen to change this mode, which is in work mode or away busy mode, that will automatically turn off their camera and their microphone when they enter into here. Be aware of that. That happens. So I recommend everyone just stay in available mode. Then students can go in and change this and work directly from within Gather. I can add other things. I can add images. I can add, in the same way, a Google Doc to, for example, a presentation and such. Same things through using an object. This object, by the way, that shared document does not show an image. You notice that. I like to add an image to my thing, so I've created an asset of a paper. So I can do this. I'm going to go asset mode, just so that I know that I've placed one. Okay, export map. Okay, so now I've put a paper there just so that I know that there's a shared document here. Students around here can access it. This was with 3. So that there's the limitation. If they're there, they don't see it. So you can increase that number that we set. Wonderful. So I hope this was very useful and helpful in creating these classroom environments for teaching. Thank you so much.